welcome you all for this webinar on Translanguaging, language proficiency for Indian learners. Today's resource person is Dr. G. Baskaran. He's a professor and Dean, School of English and Foreign Languages, Gandhigram Rural University, Deemed to be University, Gandhigram. The moderator for today's session will be Dr. Shibani Basu Dubey. She's a professor and head Department of English, the Bhopal School of Science, Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. So before we move on to the session, I have a few not exactly instructions points for the audience to remember. We have a chat facility attached with this particular platform, which will be enabled at the end of the presentation, maybe by the resource person, and then people can ask your questions. Maybe if you get any questions in course of the session, please make a note of it somewhere. Maybe you can then at the time of questioning, you can post your questions on the chat. So it will be taken. Resource person will answer the questions. I request the technical team to play the promo video of ELTAI. This is for people who are not familiar with ELTAI. Over to you, Kevin. Thank you, participants, for watching the promo clip of ELTAI. So I think this is what ELTAI is. So before I hand over the session to Dr. Shibani Basu, I have a few things for the audience. We keep getting complaints and you don't get the certificates on time and things like that. The problem is, I think I request the participants to use the same email ID for registration and log into the Google Meet using the same email ID. So there won't be any issue when you get your certificates. And when you fill out the forms, I request you to use the same email ID. Maybe when you use a different email ID, there'll be confusion at our end, and that's the reason why the certificate is being delayed. So that's I request the audience to use the same email ID for all these things, for logging in, registering, and to fill out the Google Forms. So thank you, participants, for understanding. So with these few words, I request the moderator to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Praveen, sir. I extend a warm and hearty welcome to each one who has joined us in this 108th webinar series of ELTAI based on Translanguaging, language proficiency for Indian learners. Now we have amidst us Dr. G. Baskaran as our resource person for the day. If I read his profile, we all are very, very familiar with his name. And if I take the opportunity to read his profile, that would be a testimony to how versatile he is and how he is most suited to address the topic he has taken up for today's discussion. Dr. G. Baskaran, he has MA, MPhil and PhD in English. He is presently the professor and dean at School of English and Foreign Languages, Gandhigram Rural Institute, deemed to be University, Gandhigram. Now, he has guided 90 MPhil dissertations and 63 PhD theses. 7 candidates are presently pursuing their PhD under his able guidance. He has 8 books to his credit, number of papers in edited volumes and proceedings, number of publications in international and national journal. He has even worked on a major research project funded by UGC. Now, this topic which he is presently going to deal with today, translanguaging, language proficiency for Indian learners. The moment we say Indian learners, the concept of L2 comes to the forefront. Now, without taking much time, I hand over the session to Dr. Baskaran, please. Over to you, sir.
Excellent afternoon to all of you gathered here. My friend Praveen, Professor Shibani, Naveen, participants, from all over the globe. I can understand, that the way, that they get in and responded, to the invitation, that is very, very cordial, as well as, that very, very, committed, right? I understand, right? So the moment, that my good friend and student, Sangar, of PSC Technology, Coimbatore, he approached me. I said yes. It was really, an excellent journey. Like that I have accepted, this journey, and already that I started my journey with you. My association with ELTAI, is way back, in 1986, if I'm right. Professor Yelango of Loyola College, introduced me. And his team also, they bit encouraged, and I started attending, the sessions, it was not that huge. It was limited, and whenever, that we were invited, we used to travel, gather there in a space and take part, deliver, and we enrich. And we also, learn the art of teaching, art of learning, art of developing, proficiency as such. That was a humble beginning, those days, and participants were not that huge, very, very limited, right? We used to gather there at Chennai. Our maximum, that we traveled up to Hyderabad and turned back. And opportunities were given to colleges, then here and then. And they conduct 40 to 50 participants, that normally attended, that event, and we exchange. The journal was, very thin. Now I'm happy that Praveen has introduced finally the ELTAI journey, right? What ELTAI, is doing, like 5 to 6 journals, publications, conducting, so many meetings, and today's event is, 108, that I was told. Fine. So happy to journey with you. My humble pronouns to everyone. And thank you. Thank you for the great opportunity and also the event. So I designed, my lecture, and I have chosen, Translanguaging. That is a recent development, and it is going very, very strong, throughout the globe. And in Asian countries, that it is being, yes, proved and followed, in most of the institutions, and serious research is going on, everywhere. I just start with, the way 2020 national education policy, that was introduced. And it has given, a chance to think about, this multilingual learning atmosphere, ambience, like. Ambience, is very essential, to upgrade, enrich, or develop, empower ourselves, right. The necessity, that was being understood, the need was understood. The formula, that, yes, was taken to the learning situation, learning domain, as such. The policy has stated that mother tongues, should be the basis for instruction in classrooms. And it is not taken into consideration, it should be to the grade 5 or grade 8 learning children. No, it is beyond, right, you can take. Beyond that, that you can take. And multilingualism has great cognitive benefits. Cognitive benefits for young children, and therefore children will be taught multiple languages with high quality. This is where, that we'll have to think about translanguaging, and the teacher's role, in that. We'll have to think, about high quality, that is, what does it mean? Who has to, assess? Happy that Naveen is here, to assess. His research, that he was told, like, he's doing research on assessment. That's actually, benefits the future thinkers, future intellectuals, teachers, I mean. And they will frame, the content, right? They will frame or choose the content, according to the need of the child. They also, that come to, the level of thinking of the teachers and contribute, right? So when I was planning for, this, certain things, came to my mind, right? What is this translanguaging or multilingual learning ambience, as such? Maybe, my pronouncing Hindi may not be that good. But I think, that I can make you understand what actually my plan is, my schedule is, right?
Baskaran, sir, sorry for. Oh, okay. If you're sharing, it's fine, sir.
Yes, it is.
I thought of asking you to share this, sir. Yeah, if you can share, no problem. Go on, sir.
Yeah, thank you. And it came to my mind, that few things, that I experienced, right? Abdullah child and his mother, one fine morning calling him, Abdullah, come on, अरे माडाकुली में पैसा लेके चिन्न कड़े में जाए पिंचु कत्रिका ले लो. See, in this conversation, you come across, things. I just say, things. Instead of words, I'm using, deliberate, these things. Actually, it is a practice, daily practice. Mother and son, involving in two language, formula, right? So, Madokali is there, Pinjukatrika is there. It is in Tamil. And to be more appropriate, that you can go down south in Tirunelveli and part of Nagercoil, where this term, Madakuli, is very common. That is where, that mothers used to keep money proper. Handling, is very easy, right? Handling, is very easy for them. Instead of keeping everything, every money there in a locker, this Madakuli, becomes, a familiar word, down south. It may not be found, there in Chennai or Coimbatore, as such. This is where, that learning becomes easier. When the mother tongue and then joining with learning language, users language, or nation's language, it becomes, easier to familiarize, the words. See, a newborn child takes nearly a year, to respond. Make use of the first word, dada, or appa, or amma, as such, nearly a year long, waiting that. No digressions, but even then, the child has taken a year to pronounce, a word, use a word. Use a word in practice. Attract, the senior members in our family. And in course of time, the child learning timing, becomes larger and larger because of digressions, right? Digressions. I'll come to that later. Maybe after some time, that it is possible, right? So the three language formula. So that was suggested by the Central Advisory Board of Education in 1956 for calling for the simultaneous teaching of mother tongues and regional language. English and Hindi will continue. There is much, available, right? Much, has been written in the literature about, the inadequacy of three language formula to address the needs of multilingualism in our country. The critic includes, in fact, the formula doesn't distinguish between regional languages and mother tongue, but is often interpreted in practice as a too modern language formula for speakers of northern Hindi-speaking regions of the country who also use Sanskrit, as the third language. Further, languages are taught in a formulaic, examination-based manner that does little to add value to the multilinguality of the country. When you think about, this multilingual, launch among our learning system, we are to be a bit careful, right? The question of appearing for exams, right, coming to our mind. Whether the child, can write, in mother tongue or English, because this is something concerned with proficiency, English proficiency. You can learn, using mother tongue, but you should write, only in English. Actually, it is extension of a kind of stress. Stress to children, right? Learning becomes, that is, if it is in mother tongue. But when you go for, writing, that should be, in English. It becomes, again, a type of, obstacle. A type of obstacle. So the formula itself is also not enforceable. Okay, again comes, the application is to whom? This multi-language attempt of learning, is to whom? It happens everywhere, even in premier institutes. IIT, NITs, where the teacher makes use of, sometimes both the languages, right? The language of expression and the language of interest. One is English and the other one, is native language. Most of the time, in Hindi. Suddenly, that it happens, right? When the teacher becomes, bit emotional. Or the teacher becomes, casual, right? Casual sometimes. In both the cases, the shift, that occurs from English teaching to mother tongue or native language teaching, as such, it comes. You cannot stop it, right? Suppose if you allow me, if you allow me, what I can use in my classroom, my classroom, is such, mixed, right? Children from Kerala, children from Karnataka, children from Andhra, and children from Tamil Nadu, right? And children from Tamil Nadu, that you do have multiple, languages. The tribal children are there, Telugu speaking children are there, and native Telugu speakers also there, from Telugu, from Telangana as well as, Andhra. And a child, that comes from Hyderabad, that comes with the Urdu mixed, Telugu, right? They are also there. As a teacher, that when I enter and when I teach, something poetry, what I do, right? I used to quote from, that my own native language. Oh, inevitable, right? Inevitable. But I'll have to do, that translation also. While translating, the content, that there are so many mistakes. Yes. While translating, that 100% content, may not be transferred. Right? Whatever is possible, whatever is understood, whatever is, properly interpreted, maybe, transformed to target audience. Here, children are, right, in my classroom that I told that five regions, that they assemble and I teach poetry. That poetry, that I tell, the translation first. Translation, in English, I tell first, and after that, that the native language, right, mother language, that I'll do it later. The dark had made bends, stretches and leans, sweeps and cleans the floor. The floor becomes clean, but the mind becomes dirty. I don't want to use the word, that bad. This is something, that purely to convey a poetic expression that is available in native domain in this region. I have given, the translation first. And I now, that I make children, listen in the original content, original format. So that is Karungundalai Udaya Uruthi, Valaindu Nelindu Kunindu Perikinal, Mutram Suttamanadu Manam Kupaya. So Mutram is, that the floor. The floor in front of, the house. So Mutram, that is a pure Tamil word, right? Mutram is, the floor. Manam, that is something, the mind. Mind becomes Manam Kupayanadi, dirt. When you interpret the poem, that you get, that meanings, different. The children are able to understand both the content, right? English as well as, the Tamil. So after experiencing, education, learning, here for about 1.5 years, they understand, possible Tamil, possible within quotes. Bit of understanding is possible. And I also used to tell, words from their own mother tongue. Right? They come and then they actually communicate sometimes, in their own mother tongue. So we used to observe, gather, learn, may not be able to master over the language, but I can say, that you can understand their communication. It is essential. Sometimes, that English may not be apt to express their mind. With their parents, they come and then they communicate, they make use, that language in the presence of parents. So mother tongue domination is, possible. Okay, possible. So bilingual, and it is 4 or 5 languages, that are mixed. And children from Tamil Nadu, that they learn other languages, other regional languages, and they in turn also were taught, okay, or taught, that language. So languages other than English, LOTE, okay, LOTE. So you are familiar with certain abbreviations, right? So languages other than English, they learn, that they are given, opportunities, and they also learn. So languages are taught in a formally examination-based manner that does little to add value to multilinguality of the country. The formula is also not enforceable living. Now I am getting into another important, hurdle, like, or the marginalized, atmosphere that comes into existence, right? Private schools. And you do have, now CBSE, ICS schools free to provide English as a medium of instruction. In government schools, the government primary schools, as well as in colleges, even in government colleges, yes. So English is taught, in mother language also. So I'm reminded of, one more important thing, right? So in the college where I learned, that is American college, wherein, that there is an exchange program, Berlin exchange program. So the foreigners, are invited. Yes, they come here to learn Tamil, right? Matured, and they are all grown up, right? They are all grown up. They don't have any knowledge about, Tamil. They come here, to learn Tamil, with their mother tongue background. And we are, here as teachers, to them now. English teachers teaching, Tamil in English. So this is also, happening. We'll have to think, serious, these things, right? So translanguaging. wherein, that multi-language, yes, system, is to be adapted, to make grown-up, matured, students, learn the languages. So proficiency, is possible, right? When you come to the first step, right? Proficiency, is a bit difficult to be emerged or supported or given, to a large extent, is not that possible, right? But when you come with basic things, right? This proficiency, is possible. Proficiency is possible. So it is necessary to question whether a continuation of a continuation of three-language formula would serve the stated intentions of providing high-quality instruction in multiple languages using the mother tongue as a basis for doing so. I tell you, one more, interesting thing, right? India. Our country has seen relatively few efforts at theorizing and researching multilingual education. How many years, that the system, has taken, to evolve, right? This much, that is only in 2020, that NUP came. Previously, what happened? So one interesting fact is, yes, Mohanty, and his colleagues, Mohanty and his colleagues, I quote, have written prolifically and convincingly on the sense of a mother tongue-based multilingual pedagogy. That was in 2015. The work conducted largely in tribal settings in Odisha, right? We must understand, right? We must understand first. A tribal child's demand and need to meet the global demand, to meet out, the global demand, of skills, adapting skills. How come, that is possible, right? How come that is possible? Mohanty and his colleagues, they worked a large, enormous, amount of sweat, that they shed to make, the official administrators understand the local tribal languages as the basis for curriculum and pedagogy. Even as children were introduced to Odia and English, they have argued persuasively that multilingualism is a norm worldwide, right? So it is not only, to Indian situation or Asian situation. It is actually, the global. In the US also, such an experience, that evolved. I told you, a very, very, simple story, like an American college overall an exchange, that the native speakers, come down, to American college to learn a new language. The same. It is a second language, for them. First language, is English. And for us, English is second language. Yes. So multilingualism is a norm worldwide and deserves attention and study. It's the principles and practices. Principles and practices for language education being derived from monolingual norms that do not apply to the multilingual Indian reality. See, this is very, 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 very strong research, right? Mohanty and his colleagues, that did it. They evolved this, right? The failure of monolingual norms and yes, their finding, is something leading to conform, leading them, to conform that multilingual Indian reality, is possible only if mother tongue, is made available for a child, to learn the proficiency, right? Proficiency in language. Similarly, in 2007, Agnihotri has also challenged, monolingual ideologies in education and urged that multilingualism be viewed as not just as a norm, but also as a creative. This is very, very significant. A child becomes creative and counter hegemonic resource in the classroom, right? A child starts responding to the question of a teacher, of a moderator, of a learned man, who are, he or she, performs, for the sake of, the child. Comes forward, voluntarily, responding it, right? I'll tell you, one more interesting, dialogue, between mother and bye, right, later, maybe after a few minutes. So this actually, the multilingual lingual learning ambience, would certainly support a child to act creative as well as counter hegemonic, resource in a classroom, pointing out that multilinguality is not specific to India or South Asia or Africa, but it is to the entire globe. Agnihotri, further states that multilinguality characterizes being humane and living in social groups and networks. Suppose it is given, a space. Suppose it is given, a space. How actually, it acts. Especially, in public discourses related to Indian education. Multilinguality is an underdeveloped idea in the policy arena. The two terms represent slightly different concepts. So multilingualism is a state of knowing multiple languages, whereas multilinguality refers to the idea that multilingualism is a universal human condition. That's why this idea of introducing multilingualism, in a classroom, not only, applicable to India, but also to the entire globe. That's why, the reference to universal human condition. Some societies may appear to be, monolingual due to the active suppression of different languages and language varieties. But all human societies are multilingual. When you teach, I teach what a child, learns. Simply, the child learns, everything, through mother tongue. Right? A transformation, in the name of translation, happens inside. The child tries to understand everything, the teacher delivers in his or her mother tongue, right? That's why, this is something, a universal human condition. And all human societies are multilingual. Right. A word, that is possible from a child, right? A newborn child, takes 1 year, to germinate, in her mind. 1 year. Again. So multilinguality is a normative condition. It is a normative condition. And in order to nurture it, we need to transform conditions that actively suppress it. So this in view, to keep it, in view. So we are getting into translanguaging. What it is, it seems to have brought about two eminent intellectuals, scholars, who worked on 2017, He and Lin, calls, a multilingual turn in the study of languages. So translanguaging seems to have brought about as they, call, right? A multilingual turn in the turn of languages. So language practices of multilinguals are now often explained in terms of translanguaging, leading scholars to struggle with pertinent questions regarding the validity of monolingual frameworks that have been traditionally employed in the field. So earlier it was monolingual. The teacher got into a classroom and then performed, speaking in a single language, and then, disappeared. The children were left out, in an obscure situation. What happened, for the past 50 or 60 minutes, as such. They were very close to understanding. By the time, they get close to that understanding situation, that the teacher disappeared. Rather, however, as a construct, translanguaging doesn't have a long history in the study of languages and linguistics. So this was first used by St. Williams to refer to an intentional and systematic pedagogical shift between languages. He defined translanguaging, that is, as a pedagogical strategy in which facilitators provide the input to students in one language. When they were given inputs, a process that has taken place, inside, and the output, comes. The inputs were given to the students, in one language, and students process the input and produce the output in another. So it was assumed that students would be able to use the information in another language successfully only if they understood it fully in the language in which the input was made available. Actually, this is by Lewis and others. That was in 2012. And after that came, Baker, who started translating, the term from Welsh to English, stated that reprocessing the content. This is very, very significant, right? Earlier, input was given, the process was taken place, and the output, came in another language. But here, he talked about, reprocessing the content through translanguaging led to expansion, extension, intensification of learning. So through translanguaging, what are possible, right? You can expand, extend, and also intensify the learning exercise. So translanguaging was, does refer to the pedagogic practice of language switching that was related to meaning making and facilitation of learning. They can understand at the same time, that they enrich the idea of, learning by themselves. This is possible according to Baker only through translanguage. So translanguaging gained, global attention. And its scope, beyond the domain of education. because a reconceptualization has taken place. So bilingual education in 21st century, that was actually, a book. It is a book, right, written by Garcia. It further, that in that book, that she extended further the term, translanguaging from the context of pedagogic practices to refer to the general way of using languages in bilingual as well as multilingual contexts. In her view, that is, bilingual, multilingual contexts are marked by heterogeneity of language practices that involve intricacies which cannot be understood in terms of discrete named languages. What are named languages for us? Tamil, Hindi, other regional languages, named languages, they are all. Actually, these intricacies, which cannot be understood in terms of discrete named languages. Named languages were assumed to be artificial socio-political constructs. Named languages are assumed to be artificial socio-political constructs that are imposed externally on complex linguistic behavior. So you keep this in mind, and then, right, we get into very important thing, right. Now, what is this? What is this? Simply, that if you take yes, it is typically, translanguaging now. Is typically defined as a fluid dynamic use of multiple resources from different named languages and dialects within a single integrated system. Okay, I told you about the classroom in which I am facilitating now. So in that classroom, that I got children, from 5 different regional situations. They all gather there, exchange, they communicate. When a concept, is delivered by a teacher, the teacher allows them, to understand, in their own native language, mother language. They understand, they discuss. So group discussion, is happening. Communication is, very strong because the freedom, that is, what is it called? Expression of taste. The expression of taste, that happens, in their own mother language. As a result, they are conveniently, discussing, assimilating, ideas. Assimilating, ideas. Or what is in research, that we used to say, you are able to place your arguments, after consolidating, everything. Okay, articulating, everything. Articulating, everything. So it comes, right. The familiarity or the familiarity with the concept, over the years. You have chosen, something and you started, probing, that something, getting acquainted, with that particular concept, familiar with the concept, and you are able to articulate, things, properly. These are all possible, because of your mother tongue as well as the language, that you are going to acquire now. Yes. So it enables us to better describe and understand practices previously characterized as code, switching and code mix. Earlier, that yes, that was in practice. That was in practice. So the trans within the term can be understood to refer to a multilingual's, multilingual's ability to transcend the traditional divides between named language systems. So I tell you, one more thing, right? So there is something, called, right, TBRS. TBRS, that is teaching proficiency through reading and storytelling. We are very, very, strong in storytelling, right? So when you tell, a concept, when you teach a concept, through a story, that you are doing. And the story is actually native born. In mother tongue, right? In mother tongue. Sometimes, that you translate. Make the children, learn it. Make the children, understand. So, Sita and Urmila story, right, in Ramayana. When you pronounce, these two names, proper names, Sita and then Urmila, every child, knows about, Sita more, Urmila less. But when you tell Urmila, something, more, and making children, aware, both, Sita and Urmila are very, very significant characters. There comes, a situation. There comes, a situation for children, to think about who is significant there. Yeah, they decide. Right? Garcia and Lin, note the emergence of two competing versions of translanguaging. One is a stronger version and the other one is a weaker version. Now, what is this stronger, version, poses? The stronger version poses that bilingual people do not speak languages, but rather use the repertoire, that is skills, of linguistic features selectively. Whereas a weaker version recognizes the socio-political reality of national and state language boundaries and yet calls for softening these boundaries, recognizing that such languages have real and material consequences in educational settings. So these are two versions. One is a stronger version, wherein, that the skills of language features, selectively, used by the speakers. Whereas here in the weaker section, it recognizes, that languages have real and material consequences. Again, there are two types of, translanguaging. One is impromptu. This type, of translanguaging, is spontaneous, where the teacher switches between the native language and English in a natural conversational manner. Okay, in a natural and conversational manner. This is, for example, majority of the class, speaks Hindi. The teacher might praise a student's answer with, Acha, that is great. All right, that is great. Or the students might come up with responses like, Wo kya hai na? This is a verb and not an adjective. Quickly run. Do action word hota hai. You know what? This is a verb, not an adjective, since run is an action word. See that? The response, of the response of the teacher, the response, the participation of the students, that are very, very significant. That happens, in English. That happens, in English. And in the case of, another type, that is planned translanguaging. So the teacher makes conscious decisions about the learning outcomes, keeping the multilingual diversity of students in mind. He cannot use it, so casually in the. A few ways, to employ this approach include using flashcards, with words written in multiple languages. Okay, that is one, with words written in multiple languages. Translating instructions between the mother tongue and English, and providing resources like stories in different languages from different cultures. So the translanguaging, offers chances of, learning, other cultures. You become multicultural within a classroom situation. You learn. Okay, there is a simple way of, telling, the words, right? In Tamil, that is inge, ange, enge. In Malayalam, it is ivada, avada, evada. Illi, alli, alli. That is in Kannada. So your word, that is given, that in different time as well as, different way of, pronouncing, the words. So this will certainly help, that other students from other regions, learn a different language. Through that, a culture is also possible. So providing resources like stories in different languages. So you do have, that stories, enormous stories, that when you combine, literature and language, for learning, right? Language through literature or literature through language, right? Then there emerges, opportunities to learn different cultures. Because, and the cultures, that are taught, through different languages. This is planned translanguaging. Next is also, so significant, right? Now the teacher's role, in using translanguaging for different purposes. That is purely to support students as they engage with and comprehend complex content and texts. Yes. You don't divide, the children, there in a class by their merits, but by their way of, sorting out, issues, right? That they can exchange, right? They help to emerge, they help other students, to emerge, to come to that situation. And the translanguaging, to provide opportunities for students to develop linguistic practices for academic context, to make space for students' bilingualism and ways of knowing, and support students, socio-emotional development and bilingual identities. So these four are, that is possible, right? Actually, a teacher can use this concept, translanguaging, to support students, and to provide opportunities for students, and to make space for students, and to support students' socio-emotional development and bilingual identities. This is this.
Sir, I'm extremely sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay.
Sir, we have to stick to the time, actually.
Yeah, maybe in another 5 or 7 minutes, that I'll stop.
Okay.
5 minutes,
okay, sir.
maximum.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So now the role, again, of teachers. Teachers learn to expand and localize the teaching in ways that address all content and language standards. So they can integrate home, school, community, societal practices, and also, they understand. So this sort of a classroom, translanguaging classrooms allow teachers to carry out mandates of the growing number of states that are adapting seals of biliteracy to reward students' bilingual abilities. Actually, the government of India has announced, recently, that is a common university entrance test that gives an opportunity for children from various domains, various states, various regions, to join, to meet in a classroom, of their own choice. So that ambience, actually NEP 2020, now, this actually helps students, to decide the choice of their space, their own interest, right? Taste of expression, they can register, and they can choose, a space wherein they can carry out, the mandates of growing number of states, there in a place that are adapting seals of biliteracy to reward students' bilingual abilities. Okay. Now comes, the designing. I'll stop with that. Designing translanguaging instruction. That is. Okay. Simply speaking, and then about translanguaging, and then translanguaging in the classroom, and then what actually is the contribution of the teacher, and what actually is the outcome, from the students. These are all there, but we'll have to design, something. So design, that is designing translanguaging instruction means planning carefully. That is, so grouping of students, elements of planning, essential ideas, questions, and texts. Content, of course, that is very, very major. Language and translanguaging objectives, culminating projects, design cycle, pedagogical strategies. So this design is a flexible framework that teachers in English medium and bilingual classrooms can use to develop curricular units of instruction, lesson plan, and classroom activities. The design should be, flexible. Flexible design is the pedagogical core of translanguaging classroom, and it allows teachers and students to address all content and language standards and objectives in equitable ways for all students, particularly bilingual students, who are often marginalized in mainstream classrooms and schools. Yes. So there is no say about, marginalization in classroom situation. So I am talking about, the schools that are functioning in rural situations as well as, semi-urbanized situations. The urbanized as well as, cosmopolitan situation, that we do have different ambience. That we may not be able to discuss or talk much about, this translanguaging ambience. But given then, I told you something about the premier institutes, wherein the teachers, sometimes, when they teach, a content, a concept, they go away from, that, and then emotionally, that they get into a language, of the nation. It is not, the global language, they use. Suddenly, that they jump into Hindi or any other regional language, to deliver, right? There also, it happens. But to my understanding of, this concept, where actually, we can, examine, this translanguaging, seriously. But it is inevitable, right? You cannot imagine something, a new one, right? Wherein translanguaging, is possible, that connects, the children of different cultures, different languages, and through which, they can enrich or they can update, themselves, learning English language, and their proficiency level that raises, high. There were lots of research, undertaken on this, particularly, and children, that between grade 8 and then 12, right? Wherein, the performance of the students that are shown, something elevating high, and then rising high, that is. I am sorry that I prepared something more about the skills, listening, speaking, and then reading and writing. I'm not getting into that, because of the time. Maybe I have taken, early part, more in order to make you understand what is this translanguaging. I think, that I have done, a little, not more. So the content level, that I'm able to explain, right, to you, the audience, as well as, to all those people, here. Thank you so much, and my humble pronouns to everyone, thanks for your patience. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Baskaran sir, for letting us know about such a pragmatic approach to language learning. Now, I could go through my memory lane that when we were taught language through literature, and we could not correlate with how daffodils would look perhaps. So I
Yes.
always used to think that perhaps a marigold flower would be more empathetic for learners to recognize, identify, and correlate emotions with that flower rather than daffodils, right? Similarly, when I used to pray, it's always easier and more heart-to-heart conversation with God when you speak in your mother tongue. And in school assemblies, we were to pray in English language. So there, this problem emerged that we could not put up a heart-to-heart conversation in a prayer form. So translanguaging could resolve a lot of problems for language learning proficiency, definitely. Over to this question answer session, sir. You can see the chat box filled with questions and filled with compliments for you for such a useful and informative session, sir. I'll take up a few questions because of paucity of time. This is by T.H. Lawrence. Doesn't translanguaging interfere with the need for retaining the identity, purity, and originality of the individual languages in a formal context, where either of the languages is expected to be solely used?
Yes, it is really, a nice question, from Lawrence. I'm happy about it. So the thing, that originality or authenticity, beyond that, learning ambience, is possible, right? We'll have to consider. So what you have actually contributed, for the learning or upgrading, the proficiency, from your side, that. See, I told you, that my own experience, that getting into my class, that it is meeting 5 different regions, they all actually come with, their own ideas. When they present, that is purely, that authentic. It is pure, right? It is not that, that they borrowed, right? They borrow. Upon listening their classmates, from different regions, they also borrow, they exchange. But they retain what is it called authenticity, purity, and originality also, right? So the learning.
Perhaps Lawrence sir is trying to say that it would become an informal ambience if there is translanguaging happening. So the formal aspect of language would get hampered. Is that it?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So we move on to the next question. This is again a very interesting question by Sarita Konde. She says, in an age where we are striving towards ruthlessly exposing ELT learners to native speakers' language and pronunciation, isn't translanguaging traveling back the path?
No, it is not. It is not. That to my understanding, it takes you, to the future when you actually plan for, your presentation, right? So you get into a stage and you deliver. You deliver according, upon seeing, everyone in front. So that is not possible now because, that we are making use of technology. And I'm seeing, and I'm not able to see you all, right? Maybe, that 16 images are there. Right. I'm presenting to the images, but beyond, right? Back of the image, that you are all there. So I'm doing, that I'm passing on, an information. That information, that is something, as the previous question, asked, something about purity, authenticity. That is authentic, that is pure, that is something emerging. This is something, a new field, a new type of, learning. See, I told you in the beginning itself, that a person who doesn't have any idea about English may not learn, something through language, translanguaging, right? He should have, something basic, right? So now today, no child is a rural child. Again, keep in mind, because everyone is holding on, right? And everyone is, having, some language. Of course, if not, that a pure language, it is something, a language of abbreviations, a language of numerics, a language of, mixing numerals, images, and others, right? So that is when you are actually practicing, language, proficiency among the regional mother tongue learners. Using the mother tongue, and then you learn the proficiency, and the proficiency level, is increasing, that is great. Makes you understand, and it is something, new, and it is also, upgrading. It is also growing. No idea of, that going back to past. No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Thank you, sir. I can see the chat box flooding with questions, and perhaps we can have a proper faculty development program with Baskaran sir sometime. I'll propose this to ELTAI. So I won't be able to take up any more questions because of paucity of time. But here I go with my official vote of thanks. I would really like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to Baskaran sir for such an enlightening session. As I can see from the chat box and from my personal point of view, it was really an engrossing, captivating session which really gave us food for thought. We as teachers of English, we will be thinking on these lines, how to incorporate translingualism, translanguaging into our pedagogy, perhaps, which can better our classroom performance and create a very comfortable ambience for language learning. I would like to thank all the participants who every time very keenly join the sessions conducted by ELTAI, which shows that it's a two-way approach. ELTAI is trying to give us something, and we are all the time ready to take it up. With those words, I hand over the mic to Professor Praveen for the final conclusion of the session.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for that. I think the questions, we have still questions coming on the chat. Maybe we'll try to consolidate the questions and maybe send the questions to sir. Maybe we didn't answer, maybe you can answer, sir. Maybe if you have time. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Baskaran, sir, for a wonderful session. And people, I think the quality of the session is shown on the chat. People are kind of praising you for your ideas. This is actually a kind of need of the time idea. Like people would like to do a different branching out of research. Maybe this would be a very nice topic for research. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your kind of time and idea sharing, things like that. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes, thank you so much, and you can send your questions, to my email so that I can respond.
Sure. I'll do that.
Thank you, Naveen, and thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful, moderation and everything. Thank you so much. Pranam, sir. Bye-bye.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.
Dear participants, we have this certificate link mentioned on the chat box. Please use your same email ID to fill in your feedback form through which you can get your certificates. So I would like to, I'll take 2 minutes of your time to share a few things with you. I would like to share first thing about the next webinar by ELTAI. That is webinar 109, the art of reflective teaching, mastering your craft. The resource person of this session would be Mrs. Veena Kulangara. She's a lecturer in English, University of Technology in Applied Sciences, Nizava, Sultanate of Oman. So this session is moderated by Dr. Vishal Waria, Director of K-12 Schools, Rosary Schools, Rajkot, and host of this session would be Dr. Ram Kishan Bise, Assistant Professor, SIES Graduate School of Technology, Navi, Mumbai. So I request the audience to register for this event and participate this particular webinar. To this, next to this, I have a very interesting information for the audience. I would like to share this particular information as well. Give me a minute. Yeah, what you see on the screen is the brochure of our forthcoming 17th International and 53rd Annual Conference of ELTAI, which is kind of hosted by Uttaranchal University. I request the participants to kind of write your papers and make time to attend this wonderful session. It's a 3-day conference where you will get kind of flow ideas. I hold a kind of a chance for people to come out with their ideas, papers for this conference. So last, give me 2 more minutes. have something very important to share with you. Yes, so this is one of the initiatives by ELTAI. Understanding the reading requirement of our students, reading becomes a primary skill to which they learn other three skills. So taking this into consideration, and also we have to accept that the time people spend, I mean students especially, spend for reading is largely reduced across the country. So taking this as a very serious idea. So ELTAI has launched India Reads, the reading movement. So I mean, I'll ask Kevin to post the link for this particular program on the chat. So I request the participants to find time to read what India Reads is and what are its objectives. So if you can do something to it, and if you can suggest schools to be a part of it and colleges to be a part of it, so this will be kind of we'll reach out to the needs in terms of needs throughout the country. So, I mean, I don't want to take too much of time. I know it's Sunday evening. Thank you so much for patiently listening to us. I once again thank Baskaran sir for his session, ma'am for coordinating beautifully, and Kevin for handling the technical side of the